Welcome to We Are Fredericksburg podcast. This is episode 3. Our special guest today is Dr. Jericho Matthews. Dr. Matthews, thank you for being here. I'm going to call you Jericho because, I feel like we're cool. We're friends and stuff. Happy to have you here, man. You got like a lot of interesting story stuff going on. Yeah. And you're talented. I'm speaking firsthand here. Working through some complications that I've had for literally 2 years. Yeah. And finding out like it's related to stuff I didn't even know, didn't think about, and just couldn't seem to work that out. And so it's slowly getting fixed, and it's a little bit of a process. But man, it's amazing. But what's more amazing than feeling better, after 2 years of problems is, hearing all the stuff you got going on. Yeah. So you're like full blown chiropractor, got your own practice. Yep. What made you get into that? When you went to school for it? Yeah. What caused you to go down that path?
Ooh. So originally I was about 14, 15 years old. I was playing football. And of course, small town Alabama is where I'm from. And so everyone's playing a sport. You're playing football, you're playing something. So it's like Friday Night Lights all over again. But they would just tell us, hey, go watch the older kids in the weight room. Just go watch them, do whatever they do. So I ended up kind of hurting myself when I was about 14. I remember being to the point to where like my lower back and everything hurt so bad that when I would drop a pen or a pencil in the floor, I couldn't bend down to pick it up. And I'm a 14-year-old. I was like, oh, I'll probably end up in a wheelchair by the time I'm 40. That wasn't really the case. I ended up seeing a chiropractor, and we worked on some stuff. It did take us about 9 months of like work. But after that, shortly after that, like I remember just dropping a pen on the floor and like being able to bend down and pick it up. And I was like, holy cow, there's something to this. And so it kind of just changed my whole trajectory. And so that's where I started. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go into this from here on out. And then went off to school, went to the University of Alabama. Ended up changing majors 4 times because
that's what college kids do.
That's what they do. No one knows what they want to do when they first get there. Started out as a history major, which Fredericksburg is great for that. Started out as a history major, went to archaeology, actually worked at an archaeological park for a little while, doing like archaeological digs, and then went into biology, and then went into exercise science, and that's where I ended, was exercise science when I was in undergrad. But from that trajectory, from exercise science, I later went on to chiropractic school. So I went and after getting my bachelor's in exercise science, went off, got master's, and then got my doctorate in chiropractic at Life University in Atlanta.
When you got your doctorate, did you stick around in Alabama? Did you move?
So after I got that, I ended up going. So my dad ended up getting sick. He was drafted in Vietnam. He ended up getting cancer from Agent Orange. And from there, I spent a year taking care of him. And then after he was good and he was able to take care of himself, after all the like treatment and everything, he was perfectly fine, stayed there, took care of him for a long time, and then just packed up and came to Fredericksburg.
What caused you to come here of all places?
So I was actually driving through this area, headed up to New York to visit a friend of mine who I'd went to school with, and stopped in Fredericksburg. And the people were so nice. Like if you've ever traveled to like different areas of the country or anything, you can tell like how an area is by the people that you interact with. And I stopped in and everyone was so nice. And I remember someone even being like, hey, when you get here, let us know. And I was like, what? Like I was just driving up to visit a friend. Once I was up there, it started becoming a blizzard. I drove back home and literally packed all my stuff in the back of my car, drove 11 hours through the night with my dog in the back seat, drove 11 hours, rolled up at 8 a.m. and like signed a lease on an apartment and moved to Fredericksburg.
Jeez. That's a heck of a story, man.
Yeah. Literally just packed up and moved here. Because everyone, you can tell, like everyone here is just so nice. It's such a welcoming community. And it's not something that you do find everywhere else.
Right. How intimidating is that? Were you coming here to open up a practice immediately?
Yeah, so I was coming here to open my office, but and like I'll talk with my hands. If you're listening, you don't know that we're talking with our hands. But if you're watching,
you're doing a great job.
We're
with
like,
hands, though.
we're like Ricky Bobby over here. I'm trying to hold them. But yeah, so I literally I came here to open my office, and it was one of those things. You know, I felt called to the area, just packed up, moved, but it was challenging because I moved here, didn't know anyone, like 11 hours away from any family, anything like that. And just started like meeting people, like walking into businesses, just introducing myself, just going to places, saying, hey, just opening up was a process. I mean, what was supposed to take, they always told us in school and business classes, we're always like, oh, it'll take you about 9 months to open. It took me 2 years. And I remember at some point, like being to the point I was like, I hit like poverty. I was like, I can't afford to be here. And then all of a sudden, like, we opened up, like right before I opened, there were some challenges with that, but like then I opened up and things just took off. And it was one of those things that it was just such a blessing to be here. It was such a blessing that like things opened up, we just took off and like haven't looked back since.
Do you think the community had a part in that? Like just the type of people around or the talking or sharing?
You know, absolutely. Because like, once you get to meeting people in the community and you start getting involved, and it's not even about like, hey, like I can sponsor this or sponsor that. It's just like, hey, like I've met this person and like you become friends with them and you have a community there. And it's like, hey, we want people to succeed. And that's one thing that I've like noticed about this community is they want like local business to succeed. And they'll rally around it. You see it even during COVID times through everything. Like you see it like they will rally around a business to like help it. And it's super impressive. It's super awesome to see.
When you started the practice, what was your clientele? You got a huge mixture right now. We'll get into some of that here shortly because it's a heck of a story.
Yeah.
I mean, I think anybody listening is just going to be floored by it. But when you start, did you focus on one specific thing or how to help people going through certain issues?
No, like when I first opened, I just wanted to see everybody. And it was one of those things that over time, like I wanted to see everyone. I always want to see everyone. Like I love seeing people. I love helping them through their issues. But over time, it's kind of evolved to where we do see everyone and we love seeing everyone. But I've also somehow gotten this like little niche market of like high-end, like strength athletes. It was one of those things. Like I met a friend of mine who was in the military, and oddly enough, he ended up being like top 9 in the world in powerlifting. Started working with him, and then he introduced me to another guy named Jimmy Kolb, and Jimmy is the all-time world record holder in bench press. He's also got the heaviest single lift in powerlifting history with a 1401 bench press.
Which is let's take a moment. Like that's 1,401 pounds. It's like half a car, somebody's pushing off their chest.
Yeah. It's a 1,400-pound bench. And there's wild stories with him. Like, I remember when he got that 1,400-pound bench, he comes into my office, like, that Monday and was like, hey, man, can we take an x-ray of my forearms? Because I think that I may have broken my forearm with a 1,400-pound bench. He didn't. And now, like, there's places in Florida that are flying him out to just do, like, bone density studies and stuff like that. Because it's like, you just benched 1,400 pounds. And I know he's going for a 1,500, like, this year. So from Jimmy, I got to meet, like, along with all those people, like, I got introduced to Bobby Thompson, who's a local Fredericksburg guy. Was talking with Bobby and was always telling Bobby, hey, you need to go see this guy. You need to go see this guy. And then me and Bobby randomly met one day. He looked at me and he was like, you're Jericho. And I was like, you're Bobby. And because if you know Bobby, like, you can't miss him. And we ended up connecting and met Bobby, started working with Bobby. And it's so cool because, like, got into that strongman community. And if you know Bobby, like, he's just such a great dude. I mean, he's
super laid. I've been friends with him for years. He's super laid back.
Yeah.
But he's extremely intelligent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, like, extremely intelligent, very well spoken. Like, if you get a chance, like, to actually just sit and talk with the guy, like, he'll blow you away. Like, he's super smart. Got to work with Bobby and had a lot of good experiences, had a lot of great things. Like, we've traveled to all sorts of places, gotten to do, like, a lot of cool stuff. And he's one of the top people in strongman. And that's...
I think he placed, second or third 2 years in a row.
Yeah, at the Arnold.
At the Arnold.
Which is the heaviest, show. It is the heaviest show. And if you've ever... I mean, even seeing the guy train. If you don't... he's one, if you follow his Instagram, you see, dude's he's a monster.
Yeah. He's lifting trees every day above his head. It's 400 pounds.
Yeah. Because he holds the American log lift record. Mm-hmm. Which is 400 and something pounds. It's crazy. And but he's also he puts in the work also. He puts in the recovery work. He puts in, the mobility work. He does every diet. If you followed him for any amount of time, you've seen his transition. Dude's just, he's on. He's great with everything. So he's regimented, disciplined, just crushing it.
Right. So for the average person, it's not like a hobby where you're going to the gym. These guys are breaking it down to a science.
Yeah.
Where their diet, what they put in their gut is going to be very specific. Mm-hmm. Their recovery, what they do, and when they do it, before their workout, before their lifts, afterwards.
Yeah.
Very strategic.
Yeah. And so I've gotten, like I said, his name was Alfredo, the very first guy, my friend, and he was top 9 in the world. Then we had Jimmy. We've had Bobby. And then through Bobby, I've also met a lot of other, pro strongmen. So, I've had Trey Mitchell that I've worked with. I've had Kevin Ferris, who, Kevin holds the world wrecking ball hold. You might have seen that on Instagram or whatever, but, dude's holding a wrecking ball. And
is that where they're holding?
They're just holding. Yeah, they're just holding a wrecking ball
for the longest period of time.
Yeah. And it was 500 and something pounds, and he just stares across and looks at the other guy, and the other guy drops it, and he's just and just keeps holding it. It's these guys just do crazy feats of strength. And then of course through there, I got to meet. I had another power lifter. His name's Ray Williams. That sent me he sent me a message through Instagram, and it was in my it was in the request folder.
Right.
And I'm who's in my request folder? And I click it, and I'm Ray Williams. I'm who is? And then I click on it, and I'm oh, this dude's got 200,000 followers. I think it's 190 or something like that. It's a crazy amount of followers, and I'm oh, he's got a blue check mark. Obviously he's somebody. This is before you could pay for the blue check marks.
Right.
So I click his, and I'm oh, this is a dude that holds the world squat record. And he sent me this message and was just hey, he's I've had issues with my knee, haven't really been able to squat for a year. And I was okay, let's set up a time, let's go check it out, go assess him. We do a squat assessment, we do everything, see what's going on. And I remember I told him, I was dude, your squat's trash. it's you're the world's best squatter, and I'm oh, your squat's trash. But I remember started working with him, and Ray, he's actually competing, and he's back. We've been working together for over a year, and he's squatting over 1,000 pounds again, and he feels great. He's this is the best I've felt in over 5 or 6 years. And so it's so cool getting to see those people doing what they love. And I remember the first time I worked with Ray, I said, hey, he was why? What is it? What is it about you working with us? And I said, it's the fact that I get to see you do what you love. I go, this is what you love doing. I was and you couldn't do that. So being able to see you do the thing you love doing, that's what matters. Getting to see someone do something that they haven't been able to do, but they love doing. And that just changes someone's whole life.
Right, because you're able to not only see it, but play a small part in it where you're helping them with the mobility aspect of a lift like that. It's an insane amount. The risk is pretty high of damaging something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's when you're lifting heavy weights and you're lifting a lot, if you're squatting 1,000 pounds or you're benching 1,400 or you're holding a wrecking ball for 500, or if you're log pressing 400 and something overhead, there's no minor injuries. When you're doing a heavy lift, an injury is going to be a serious injury. So you have to make sure that everything is on point for that lift, or else You know, and that's the reason these guys put in the work. They train, they do everything. I mean,
they can't overlook something that feels kind of minor.
Yeah.
Like they can't overlook that before these things.
Yeah. And I mean, the biggest thing that you'll notice about a lot of these guys is, like, for instance, Bobby. Bobby's biggest thing is the dude has so much grit and he's just so determined that, like, if he's going after it, he's gonna give it his all. And that's something, you know, like, these people have, like, it's a little minor, it's a difference that they have from a lot of different people. And, like, when they're in the gym, it's like, hey, I'm either going to get it or I'm going to get it. Like, there's no difference. So we'll get you to compete again.
Oh, Jesus, man. I got so much going on between the construction company and the We Are Fredericksburg.
Hey.
I had a blast. You know, I did 7 competitions.
Just one more. Round it out. Like, make it a nice even number. 8.
Well, I'd have to build up to, I think, the size, and then I would have to, you know, start cutting down for a competition.
Yeah.
So I'd probably need, like, I don't know, 4 months to.
I mean, and once you do 8, you might as well just get to 10, because that way you're double digits. Yeah, man. You're only 3 away.
It was like 7 years ago. 7 years ago was my last competition.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude.
But, you know, I had all these, I mean, the whole reason I got into it was just personal lows in life. And I was like, all right, I need something to hang on to, which was the physical thing.
Yeah.
So I went to the gym and I told my trainer, like, look, my body will give up before my mind. That's what I'm offering you. So put me through whatever I need to go through. I want the results. And there was times where I almost passed out. Like, he'd have to run down and, like, get me some OJ or something. And then I got my sugar rush and we're back at it, man. But it was like 1 hour, 3 days a week, man. And in like 6 months, I'm stepping on stage, and I don't necessarily know I was, you know, earned first place against, you know, what I saw the competition. But I got first place on that one. That was the only time I got first place. I ranked fairly decent on all the others.
Yeah.
That was like the only good thing in my life at the time. Everything else was a struggle. I was struggling in business and couldn't stay focused. It was a nightmare.
You do see that a lot, especially people that, like, are heavy into the gym. Like, you'll see that to where they end up getting into it as, like, a foundation. And with that, like, they'll even start noticing, like, as they start to get that foundation a little bit better under them, and they start focusing on that, like, they'll even start, like, business will get better. Things will just start improving, like, in their life, because they're focusing on a foundation of something instead of just being so scattered all over the place, not having any direction.
Right. When they come in, I mean, most people, I went to the gym every single day for years. Yeah. So I would see people come and go. Yeah. I'd see people stay regularly and, like, nothing ever changed with them. So they're eating the same thing. They're plateauing or whatever. But a lot of people end up, you know, they end up in church or they end up in the gym, you know, because of personal things going on in life. And, you know, it's a great motivator. And when you get that shock to your core, like your value system and, you know, life-altering things.
When it gives you a drive towards something.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't even have that. Like, they don't have that, like, oh, well, I'm working so hard for something that I'm, like, laying it all out there. And once you get, like, laser focused on something, like, other pieces of life just start falling into place.
What I noticed, every aspect of my life improved.
That's what I'm saying.
Because I was, you know, I felt better.
Yeah.
I felt better about myself.
Yeah.
I was going through discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And I was persevering through stuff, which is, when you're in the gym, if you're really pushing yourself, you're persevering.
Yeah.
The self-worth and the value spike that you get from that, you feel better, your body feels better. You end up staying in a better emotional state majority of the time.
Oh, yeah.
And so I tell people, like, you know, like, that's one thing where the rest of your life, the quality of your life is better.
Mm-hmm.
If people were to do that before they had some shock in their personal life that caused them to hit a low, maybe, you know, just consistently staying on a little bit higher level because of going and working out all the time, maybe they wouldn't end up hitting those lows. I mean, there's a lot of value in that discipline in terms of mental stability, which gives you more stability over your emotions. And that's why you meet these these people that are doing competition. I mean, these are average people that just went to the gym and they met somebody else and they started thinking, I know so many people that had never done it before.
Yeah.
And I talked to them and they talked to other people. And next thing you know, they're doing competitions. And like their life goes a different direction. And now they're all focused on very positive things, in their life.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, you get these people, and it even helps them, like, just developing that discipline. It helps them so much just in all aspects of their life. And it even adds, like, not necessarily, like, quantity. Will it add quantity to the years that you have? Yeah, absolutely. But it adds more of that quality to the years that you have. Because, an increase in muscle mass is going to have you just throughout the rest of your life. It's going to have you doing so much better. Because you don't want to be that 90-year-old person, because you've seen them. Like, you have 90-year-old people who are moving around doing great. I mean, you see some people that are in their 70s that aren't even, like, moving as well as some of these 90-year-olds. Mm-hmm. So not only does it add quantity to the years, but it adds quality to it.
Right. My mentor, met him when he was 64.
Yeah.
And he was retired, didn't need to work, but wanted to come work with me, for, every year since.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't need to work, but I want to stay active. Because he retires every winter to Florida. He calls it God's waiting room. Because he's like, I go down there and it's like I see all these old people, retired, trying to live their life, but they don't do anything. They're not active, and they just deteriorate in a very short period of time.
And they've just given up.
Yeah, he's like, I'm happy to go down there and have some margaritas, but I'm also riding a pedal assist bike on the beach 15 miles maybe once a week or so. I'm going to the gym 3 times a week, and he's got his routine where, and he's doing that right now.
Yeah.
And, he's 70 years old. And he's like, so last year he's like really trying to focus on his health. So he's going through all the doctor's appointments. Yeah. And they're like, man, you are so healthy. And he contributes. He's like, don't overbrush your teeth, because there's some tie with heart attacks with that. Yeah. He says, you drink a little bit of alcohol and you drink a little bit of coffee.
Yeah.
And then he says positive mental attitude. That alone,
I think
you'll live years longer.
Yeah.
That and then the physical side.
Yeah. And that's one thing too, like that positive mental attitude, because a lot of people know, like, when you're hurting or in pain or any of that, like, you can't go to the gym, you can't do any of this, like, it's going to start declining.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, people that don't feel good aren't happy people.
Yeah, when I've got injuries, I feel like I'm working backwards.
That's what I'm saying.
And then I don't even want to do anything until I feel like I'm fixed, because I don't want to mess up even more.
Yeah.
I see these guys with these, like Ray Williams, world record holder, 6 years, right?
Yeah.
I see these guys and they do these huge feats, and you think, wow, that's like an enormous amount.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is it's the mind that's even stronger. I mean, you can't go out and do that with like the strongest mind in the world. These guys are known for being the strongest lifters in the world, but have to say they're probably the strongest minds in the world too.
Yeah. And that is one thing that I love helping them with too, is I'll see they'll have an injury. I know that'll be the biggest thing, that the threshold that they have to cross is when they get to that point where they had the injury, whatever weight it was, and having to go beyond that. And I remember talking to Ray about it one time, and he was like, I remember I got to, it was like, for him, it was like 900 and something on a squat where he had hurt his knee, and he was like, he got to that, and he was like, I was a little nervous, but I had to they have to talk themselves into okay, I'm okay. And then once they cross that threshold again and they're like, okay, I can do this, then that mind aspect is like, oh, I'm actually okay now. Essentially, it's like a return to play kind of style, like for any athlete or anything. But once they know that they can do it again without being hurt, that changes the whole mind. That shifts their mind. But that once they get to that point, it's almost like a little roadblock. And they have to have such a strong mind to be like, I can overcome this.
How often do these guys, get deflated because they've had an injury and they think they can't go on, or they've got limitations going forward?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them, especially the top guys, is like once they get that injury, if they get deflated, it's almost crushing for them, you know, like because they're like, if I can't do this going forwards, you know, that's what they love to do. You even see it, like I see it even when people just come into my practice, like, and they come in and let's say it's something that they just love doing, whether it's jujitsu or gardening or playing with a grandson or anything like that. Like when they get to that point and they're like, oh, I can't do this anymore. Like we had a guy.
Like they accept it.
They accept it because they feel like, oh, I'm older, or, oh, I got this injury and I just can't do this again. And so I see it like I had a guy come in, and when people come in, I love to ask them, hey, what do you love to do? Because like, again, I want to take someone, I want to figure out what they love to do that they haven't been able to do anymore and get them back doing the thing that they love to do. Like I had a guy come in and he goes, hey, he's like, I love to do jiu-jitsu. He's like, I haven't been able to do it for like 2 or 3 years because I had this back injury and like I just don't feel comfortable doing it again. And we started working together. And like I told him after the first one, I was like, I want you to go do jiu-jitsu. And he like looked at me and he's like, what? And I was like, how do you feel? He goes, I feel great. And I was like, okay, good.
Like
go.
This is years after accepting.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, well, he's like, I didn't think I was ever going to be able to do it again. I'm like, well, why not? I was like, go. Like, I was like, because if something happens, like, I'm here. I'm like, but once we, like, look at the x-rays, once we look at everything, I'm like, you don't really have anything, like, that's keeping you from doing jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And you find so many people, they get, you know, they have something where it's like someone told them, oh, you probably shouldn't do that anymore. Or they just have this minor pain. They're like, well, I have this pain in my back. Like, I just know that it's only going to get worse. And it's like, we start taking care of it. They feel great. And I'm like, go.
Do you think that people avoid going to the doctor or chiropractor because of this acceptance?
Yeah, I would say they do. Simply because, like, you don't want to be told you can't do something. Like, I've had people who had issues and they're like, I just don't even want to know what it says. I had a lady literally today who came in and she was like, I don't want to see it. Like, I don't want to see my x-ray. Right. And I was like, actually, everything looks good in here. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah. I was like, you look pretty good in here. There's nothing serious. And she was like, oh, thank God. Like, it's one of those almost like ignorance is bliss. Mm-hmm. Like, if I don't know what's happening, then
there's hope.
Yeah. Yeah. But then I'm like, hey, no, like, let's just find out what is going on, fix it, and get you doing the things that you love to do again.
Right. So there's people that are avoiding coming in just because they don't want the confirmation that they can't do it going forward.
Yeah.
And majority of the time they find they can.
Yeah.
Like they can just work through that stuff with some therapy.
Yeah. They can, you know, whether if it's some simple stretches or something like that. Like I've had people come in who had like severe sciatica shooting down the leg, and I'm like, it's just this. And we work on it and they're like, what? They're like, I thought it was like all these bad issues. And I'm like, no. I'm like, it's literally this muscle that, like, it's an external rotator of the hip. Like, it shoots from here to here, and when it tightens, it'll pinch your sciatic nerve. And, like, we work on it, give them some stretches, and they're like, I've never had it again. And I'm like, yeah, like, imagine that. Like, you can go do everything you like to do now. And, but it's just, they just don't know.
Some things take a little bit longer, like a process, because as you start doing adjustments and getting rid of, like for me, getting rid of knots in certain areas, then you start countering that with the rest of your body and other muscles. And so it's a process to work through that. Yeah. But in some cases, people come, if I'm hearing you correctly, they come and it's just one localized spot, and it can be resolved relatively easy. Yeah. But this has been a long-term thing that they've been dealing with.
Yeah. We had a guy, and I remember telling you about it one time, and we had a guy who came in, and he had a cane. Like, he walked in with a cane and came in. He was having severe sciatica shooting down the leg and walked with a cane. And he's had it for years, and we started working on it. And then he got up, walked out without the cane, and just forgot that he even brought it. And then, like, the next time he comes in, he was like, oh, yeah. Like, we called him. We were like, hey, like, what's, you forgot this. And he was like, oh, yeah. He's like, I totally forgot that I had it. Like, I felt so good. And so he's actually given us his cane and, like, wrote us up a whole thing and was, But those are like you're completely right. Like sometimes there are things and it takes much longer. Whether people had like partial tears of muscles or something like that, or like knots, and now they have compensations from doing things over time. Or if it's something that's like, oh, I've had this and I've had this one thing and I've had it for years, but it was something such a simple solution, but they just didn't know. They just learned to live with it.
You focusing on what means the most to somebody, what they're doing mobility-wise, and trying to help them reach that goal, playing a part in that, being their support system. Would you say that is really what your business model is based on?
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's that old adage, like, I just care. You know, like when someone comes in, it's like, because I know for me, like, for instance, like my dad, he could never go throw football with us or do some of those things because he hurt his back. And so he would just sit there. So it was always me and my brother just outside playing, but like my dad couldn't really do anything. So it's like, for me, seeing someone that's like, oh, you can go play with your kids now. You know, that's what means the most. Having someone that like, oh, you can go do things, like just caring that they can go do the things they love to do, because what's the point of life if you can't?
Right. So you're trying to source where the problem is, and what all the other contributing parts are that playing a role in that, and then get down to the brass tacks of it.
Yeah. So like I'm kind of a nerd when it comes down to like biomechanics and things like that. Like when I was at Alabama, like I got to focus on like the human body and everything, and I had some really cool experiences, whether working with football teams or whatever. But like I remember like I got to work with wheelchair athletes because it's a little more challenging coming up with strength programs for people that have spinal cord injuries and they can't feel anything from the waist down or something like that. And so it really allowed me to have to think outside the box when it comes to, all right, well, how am I going to have this person in a wheelchair do a pull-up or work their lats or, you know, get on a bench press and have to bench? Like, and it allowed me to have to think of things differently. And like, it's so cool because like I said, I've gotten to meet a lot of cool people, like if it's Ray Williams who had the world squat record, it literally just got broken like a couple weeks ago. And so he's going back now that he feels good from his injury to try to take that back. But whether if it's Ray Williams or whether if it's Jimmy Kolb who has the bench press record or any of those people, but I've had people who were like I had a lady who she was at Alabama and she was with the Lithuanian national team, got in a car accident, lost her leg, and it's like, well, what am I going to do now? Like, I'm a national basketball player for my country. I don't have two legs. So she came to Alabama to do wheelchair basketball. So I know our coach at the time offered her a scholarship. She came. And that's, you know, I've gotten to meet people like that. I've gotten to meet people that have multiple gold medals in the Paralympics, like that I got to work with and develop strength programs for and all of that. So being able to take those like biomechanics and apply them to just, you know, someone coming in, it's like not only do we look at the spine and we look at, you know, all the bones and everything and joints and how they articulate, because like when someone comes in and they tell me what they have going on, like in my mind, it's like Sherlock Holmes all over again. Like I'm like, okay, well, like what's the joint? What muscles, origins, insertions, what attachments, what's going there, what nerves come out, what nerves pass through. Like, and these are all things I'm thinking about. Like, what's the action of the muscle that pulls? So when someone's like, oh, I have this hip injury. Okay, well, let's check the joint. We know that the SI joint only has 2 to 4 degrees. Like, if we lose a degree, you lose 25 to 50%. Like, so is that okay? Then what about all the muscles that attach? Like, these are all things that go through my head when someone's telling me, like, well, I just have this hip injury. And so, like, it's
but you're breaking it all down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm breaking it down.
So that you can figure out and strategize,
yeah,
how can we get this person in a better spot?
Yeah.
Jericho, do you think that your focus on exercise science played a huge role in your ability to break things down to the source and start helping people resolve the issues?
Oh, yeah. Well,
does every chiropractor get into exercise science?
No, I mean, not everyone does, and the thing is, even if they do, even if a lot of them get into exercise science, like everyone almost kind of finds their niche. Like you start seeing chiropractors who love running, and I'm not a runner. And now, granted, do I know biomechanics of running and everything? Absolutely. But not everyone gets into exercise science, but you also start to see that, like, for me, I know it's helped me out a lot just because even with our training, I still take classes because I like to consider myself a nerd. Like, I'm a mega nerd. So, like, I dive into research all the time. Like, it's not uncommon that I'm sitting at my office on, like, a Saturday night or a Sunday, and I'm looking at, like, muscle vectors of the hip. Like, how does, the piriformis pull? How does the psoas pull on the hip? Like, what does that muscle vector look like? So when I'm looking at an x-ray, I then know, okay, well, if I look at the joint space of the hip, like, I want to know, like, what's pulling where. And so a lot of people, even if they have, like, the general overview, like, I know I had finished up a class, because we still take continuing education. I had finished up a class that was about 16 to 20 weeks, and it was just advanced performance biomechanics. Where does force transfer happen on the foot? Like, how does all these things, like, tie in? Like, how does, like, breathing out of your mouth over time create issues in the neck and in the anterior plane of the shoulder? Like, these are all things that, like, I just get super nerdy about, and I dive down these rabbit holes, and I'm like, I just want to know these answers. Exercise science kind of lays that foundation, but then, like, just like with everything, like, you can have the foundation, but where you take it from there, that's totally up to the person.
Right. So under stress, like the muscle under extreme stress.
Yeah. And that's another thing. So, like, even if you look at research with some of these athletes, like, especially super strong, like, high-end strength athletes, there's never been any research done. There's never been rehab for high-end strength athletes. Because how do you measure that? There's only one person who holds the world squat record. And so, and I always say, like, rehab is theoretical until rubber meets the road. And so it's like, everything we're doing, is it going to work? We'll see when you squat that 1,000 pounds again, or when you bench press 11 or 12 or 1,300. Because everything we're doing up until this point, it's theory. It should work. But a lot of it is when, like, okay, once you've started having the experience of working with the people, then you're like, okay, well, I have personal experience with someone that squats 1,000 pounds. Like, I know what's going to help. I know what's not going to work. And especially with some of these guys, you'll start to see, like, adaptations in their body from them doing it for periods of time. And so it's hard to be like, well, anatomically in a textbook, like, this is how it should go. And it's like, yeah, that's how it'll go in a textbook. But when you have someone that squats 1,000 pounds, like, it's totally different. It's totally different in real life. And so being able to know, like, again, having the experience of working with the people is huge. Because there's a saying that is, performance is the proxy, which means how they perform is the standard. If you perform better by your hip being a little externally rotated, we're going to make sure that you're good. We're going to make sure that your hip is a little externally rotated so that you can hit your performance. Because if you're the best in the world, then you're the best in the world at it. I remember I had one kid go into the NFL Combine. He was like, I just got this anterior pelvic tilt. And I stopped him and I said, all right, man. I said, well, every world-class Olympic sprinter has an anterior pelvic tilt, because it allows you to sprint better. I said, so we can fix it, or we can worry about it after the combine. And so that's what you got to think about with some of these people is like, we'll worry about it after you're, like when you decide to retire or when you decide to do this. Because, again, like, we want to make sure that what you're doing, especially like sports people or something like that, we want to make sure that you are the best at what you're doing. And so you'll notice little adaptations in people. So, like, when I look at the person that holds the world squat record, like, okay, like, he's got minor adaptations to keep squatting the way he squats. So it's all about, like, making sure you have the experience to work with the people. And once you get the experience, like, a lot of times, if you've worked with someone, it doesn't matter, like, they're not looking at your degrees or certifications or any of that. Like, I mean, if you look at letters behind someone's name, like, I have all these letters and never once have I ever put them up on anything because it's like no one's ever asked. And it's like a lot of these athletes, they're like, oh, yeah, I went to this guy because he got me better. And they've gone to all sorts of people, but they'll be like, I went here, go see him. And like someone that squats 1,000 pounds is going to send another person that squats 1,000 pounds because they know, like, okay, like he knows what we're doing.
Right. So with my construction company over the years, since I started it, my business model has been about the customer experience. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been about money. Money's been the byproduct. Unfortunately, the customer experience, I've been able to fall through enough where, the money's come in and allowed me to grow. Yeah. I've always said, not every referral is the same. Yeah. There's a quality of referral difference between different experiences. Yeah. For you, to me, it's like every customer's coming in that's getting these problems solved versus another set appointment for another adjustment, and let's hope the muscles didn't tighten up and everything kind of shift back where it was. If you're in there solving problems, the referrals that you're getting and the reason why your clientele is going up constantly and you've got consistent growth is you go to Jericho, the guy's focused on trying to fix your problems. Yeah. He's asking you what it is that you do so that you can do the things that you love to do. Yeah. And that's a no-brainer. To me, like I just have this great appreciation for that business model where it's because I'm about people. I think, I've worked for corporate America, large banks, and I've seen my fair share of profit over people. And it just was such a turnoff to me that I thought, well, let me run all my business the way I want. Nobody's going to tell me. And it's going to be people before profit. Mm-hmm. And it's worked out really well for me. I mean, there's people that can be successful the other way. I don't think the quality of life is there.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the quality of life aspect, the therapy that goes into that. Mm-hmm. I think we've talked a little bit about cold water before, the therapy, and I'm really starting to, I've been digging into all this stuff for a while, but I'm fascinated by the control that we actually have that we don't even use to improve our mind, body, spirit. Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of cold therapy stuff. I like that. It's not fun. It takes discipline because like you're staring at your 50-degree water, your ice cubes, and it's not inviting. Yeah. It's good for you. Yeah. So I'm still working on being better about all that stuff so I can be consistent. But I really I don't want to just feel good physically. I want to feel good mentally. I'm going down this rabbit hole about like genetic methylation and trying to understand maybe deficiencies in my body. Yeah. And I thinking back, man, I've put all these different vitamins in place and tried different things over a period of time. I've done like solid carnivore. Yeah. When I was doing bodybuilding competitions, I was very strict and disciplined. Everything was black and white when it came to the diet and the eating times and not deviating. So I'm trying to find the edge. Where can I get a little bit more feel good, whether it's emotional or body, and so for me, I've been focused on what I put in my gut. I'm trying to say no to pizza more often, which is hard considering I grew up eating it every single week. But in talking with you, and coming in and seeing you a few times, I'm realizing I have literally not done things that I could have done. There's probably things I would have done had I felt better. Yeah. Because I went through this multi-year phase of acceptance and thinking, okay, well, that's just the way it is. Because I remember I displaced my pelvic bone back in 2015. And had a friend of mine put it back into place. Shout out to Shannon. She's unbelievable. But, it was fine. It was like it went away. But then things popped back up. And I was like, man, it must be from that. Yeah. And so I justified why it's happening. Mm-hmm. And I'm no expert. Yeah. And then I accepted it, which I'm no expert to do that either. And now I'm realizing through, all this other stuff I've got going on in my legs that the issue that I thought was in my lower back is actually like it's going away. Like I can't go pop my hip like I used to.
Yeah.
It's just it doesn't need to be popped. It doesn't need to be readjusted back into place. It's that these other issues in another area were continuing to cause this thing. Yeah. It's like, holy crap, like look at, I've lost like 700 and some days worth of time not doing things because I just didn't take the effort to go in. I swear that, you know, and maybe this is just me in my opinion.
Yeah.
But men are hard-headed.
Yeah, they are.
Right? And we're designed, under pressure and everything else. Like, we'll just deal with it.
Yeah.
Right? And I almost feel like probably a lot of men that would come into your practice probably, driven there by their spouse saying, hey, you get in there, go take care of yourself, get it looked at. Yeah. And that's why a lot of men do. I think it would probably be just like I want to figure out what might I be deficient in my body. Yeah. Is it a vitamin? Is it a mineral that could totally change the way I feel on a regular basis? Maybe the same thing's happening with the body. Yeah. And if people are not feeling 100% with that, it's like go in. Yeah. It's like go and find somebody who's going to solve your problem, like you, and just give it a shot and see what it looks like.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I hear it all the time. I'll have a guy come in and he'll be like, well, I don't like to go to the doctors. And I look at him and say, I'm a guy. I don't like to go either. We're all the same. We all do the same things. I was like, and then like I get to talking to them and they're like, oh, he's literally just one of the guys. Like he's like a normal dude and he's just helping me out. And so we end up just talking about whatever it is, whether if it's different whiskeys or whatever. And they're like, this guy's solving my problems and we're talking about sports or whiskey or whatever. Like, I'm in. And so a lot of these guys, once they start coming, they're like, oh, I actually like this place. But you're right. It literally takes their wife driving them or someone making the appointment or them being so like dealing with this problem for 5, 10, 15 years before they're like, well, I'll try this. And then they come in and they're like, oh, here's a guy that also doesn't like going to doctors that, I've had injuries from playing sports or literally just working out or something like that. And like, I remember in October, I actually had a compression fracture on my spine that I caused myself. And I was in the gym and I was working out and I lifted something a little too heavy, felt a pop. I was like, well, immediately I went from like meathead gym bro mode to like, okay, let me start doing this clinically, and started rehabbing right then and there and then came into my office, took an x-ray, see what was going on. I was like, okay, well, I didn't herniate a disc, and I saw that I'd gotten a compression fracture, so I was like, oh, okay, all right, I can breathe a little bit. But, I worked the rest of my day with a fractured spine. And I'm like, oh, well, this is just, I'm a dude. Like, we'll worry about that later. But, like, compression fractures, like, I know, like, okay, they're going to heal. It's like, keep movement. It bothers me every once in a while, but it's nothing serious now. But it's like, I know how to deal. And a lot of times I know how to deal with things because I've had the issues before.
Are you finding more people come in when they think it's, like, reached an unbearable level of pain or discomfort, or more people coming in like once they start feeling symptoms of like something's off?
I mean, I've had a little bit of both, but mainly it's, especially for guys, it's when I've reached that unbearable. It's almost like I'm the guy you go to, like when you're just like, I've tried everything. And it's like, okay, it's like, well, let's do this, this, and this. Because I've had people come in, they're like, well, I've done this and I've done this, and it's like I've tried everything, and like we'll pull it up and we'll work on like the iliopsoas, which attaches to the front of your hip and goes to like the entire lumbar spine, and it's like they're like, holy cow, it's like my hip doesn't hurt now. And I'm like, well, that's all it was. I was like,
it makes perfect sense to you.
I was like, do these stretches, and they're like, that's it. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, come back next week, let's just check, see if you even need anything. Like, I don't even know if you need anything. I was like, let's just see how you're doing. We'll go from there. And they're like, oh, okay. So like it's interesting because it's like I do feel like sometimes I'm the guy when you've exhausted every other resource and you don't know what else to do. So it's kind of cool.
You've got a huge range of clientele. You've got people. I mean, not just one, but a handful of like professional athletes that have world record holders. Olympians. All the way to you've got clients that are young. You've got clients that are 80s and going through all sorts. Like it's such a huge, wide variety of clientele. And you could easily just focus on powerlifting or focus on helping people rehab after accidents. And you've got enough, I guess, notoriety in the trade that you could pick whatever you want, but you're still just picking people. And there's no category to that.
I mean, seeing an athlete that can't squat, that's squatting 1,000 pounds again, it's more so like, again, they're doing what they love. And it's like when you see someone's face light up, I'll see someone's face light up from squatting 1,000 pounds or even squatting 200 pounds or 300 pounds, something they haven't been able to do. Or I have this older lady who's in her 90s and she like gave her grandkid a piggyback ride. Like the kid got on her back and she was like, yeah, I'm hurting. Like I gave this kid, I gave my grandson a piggyback ride. And I'm like, but you could do it. And she like stops and she goes, I was able to do that. And I was like, yeah, how awesome is that? How many 90-year-olds do you know putting a grandkid on their back and like walking around with their grandkid on their back?
It's like, let's help you do it again.
Yeah. And she was just amazed. Like she like lit up because she'd never thought about that. She was like, oh yeah, like I can do that. And so like seeing people light up from that kind of stuff, or like even a kid who like has an issue and they may be middle school like gymnastics person and they're like, yeah, this hurts, and then you like work on them and they're like, oh, I feel great. Can I go and like compete this weekend? I'm like, yeah, you're perfectly fine. Like you don't have anything wrong. I was like, you just kind of tweaked this little thing, but go compete. Let me know how it does. You better win first place. I'm just joking, but I'm always like, you better win, and so I just love seeing them do what they love to do, because like getting to encourage these people with what they truly love is, whether if it's being able to like pick up a grandkid, or if it's seeing someone squat 1,000 pounds or go to the NFL Combine, like it's such a wide range. And I mean, just being able to be like, oh yeah, they can do that again. Like it almost gives them like life back, which is super cool.
What is the craziest thing you've come across, experienced in your chiropractic career?
I mean, that could go a lot of different ways. Now, are we talking injury-wise, or are we just talking like just crazy experience?
I'm talking you can be recorded saying it.
You can be recorded saying it. Because there's a couple things I'm like, I don't know if we can really talk about that, because, I mean, I've gotten involved with people kicked out of Russia, like all sorts of things. It's interesting because, like I said, I've gotten to see people who came in using a cane that got to leave without it and never needed it again. I've gotten to see people who have torn muscles or things like that, and then like we start rehab and we start stuff and they're healed up within 12, 16 weeks. I've gotten to see a lot of great lifts, whether if it's picking up 400 pounds overhead to squatting 1,000 pounds to whatever that is, like being on a bus at World's Strongest Man with all the athletes, and like you're sitting there and you're like, everyone squats or everyone deadlifts over 900 pounds, and then there's me. And I definitely can't get close to that. But, like I've gotten to see that stuff. I've gotten to be on TV with CBS or ABC, and like seeing people just like take a picture and send it to me of like me on TV. And I'm like, that's real. That's a real thing. Like there I am. Or being on like a YouTube channel and it having like 15,000 views within like 10 hours. And I'm like, oh, that's me on the thumb clip. But I don't know. I've seen a lot of wild stuff. I mean, as far as all that goes, it's just been a lot of wild experiences. All of them's been super awesome.
It's adventurous. Like, you've done a lot of travel, going different places.
Yeah.
Meeting different people.
Yeah. Literally traveled all over, like California, Colorado, like Florida, South Carolina. Even as we're talking now, there's a big powerlifting meet in like Reno. And like a major company was like, oh, well, do you want to come out? And I'm like, no offense, but like my guy will be okay. Like if he needs anything, like he has direct line to me, but like it's super cool. Like being backstage at a lot of these places is always super cool. And like I said, you get to meet a lot of great people, and it's just really cool experiences. And I feel like that's what life is, just, you know, capitalizing on a lot of really cool, a lot of great experiences.
I'm all about making it fun and exciting.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's not easy getting out there and doing business. And it's a lot easier if it's fun and exciting.
Oh, absolutely.
Admire the adventurous life you're living. You know, it's very cool to be involved in all of that stuff and not be so focused on the difficulties and the challenges of business. It's almost like that all this other stuff is the focal point, and you're not distracted. You know, by the tough challenges. They seem to kind of work themselves out. If you do your business right, have a good business model, everything else seems to be easier.
And not only that, it's like and I think the best business model is literally just caring. You know, like you said earlier, like it's having that people over profit, caring about the people walking in your doors or the people that you're helping. Like eventually, like everything else will take care of itself. Being able to see someone's face light up from something they never thought they'd be able to do again, it's so rewarding. Like, that's it. It's like, who cares? Like, about the profit, who cares about anything else? Like, we're here on this earth one time. Like, do what you love doing. And that's what's so rewarding about it all.
Your office is downtown Bridgewater, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the address?
316A. Because there's an A and a B. We're 316A Bridgewater Street.
And you guys take walk-ins too.
Yeah.
I mean, you keep a good schedule, but you take walk-ins as well.
Yeah.
People can call ahead of time.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, ideally, like with if it's your first time, like give us a call, give us a little heads up so that we can like make sure X-rays go in and all that, just in case we need to take them. But after that, like it's like just pop in, like, which makes it super easy. It allows people to come in on their schedule. Well, and, you know, it's like, well, you got a whole week. Just come on in. Like, we're here.
Jericho, you're downtown business owner, but the chiropractic business is not the only business. You've got another business you're involved in downtown, aren't you?
Yeah, so I'm also part owner of a bagel shop. So it's Southern Bagel and Provisions. And we literally a few of us just got together, and we were like, there's no bagel shop. And so we decided just to try to open a business a month before COVID, which took its toll. But yeah, we got to open a really cool place that people can go in, and we get bagels shipped in from New York, which allows us to like do bagel sandwiches and all that. And it's been a really cool experience just being able to open up something else that the community can have access to. Like, I feel like anything that is community focused and being able to just like bring value to the community is just super cool. And so having another restaurant that you can go get brunch at, I mean, you can't beat that.
And you can get pizza on bagel site.
Oh, yeah. If you go to Instagram, you'll see a ranking of our pizza bagel. I'm not saying it's the best pizza bagel, but if you go and check it out, you know, just let me know. I gave it like an 8.3 or 8.6.
So it's easy to catch some breakfast on your way into the office.
Yeah. So just stop by, grab you a bagel, tell them I sent you. They're probably not going to care, but still tell them I sent you.
You've got a lot of interesting stuff that you post out there. I've watched some of it. It's pretty cool. You know, you're eating contests, but you've got a Facebook page, Alive by Design.
Yep, Alive by Design Chiropractic Center.
Right. Where else can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram. Like we have the Alive by Design Chiropractic Center Instagram. And then I also have one geared towards like athletes and things, which is just Dr. J. And so you can find me at either of those and find me on Facebook. And then, of course, our website, which is alivebydesign.chiropractic.com.
Well, good. Jericho, I appreciate you coming into the studio.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Man, you got some awesome stories. Thanks for sharing those.
Yeah, absolutely.